This is the footage from Apalachee High School that no one is talking about. And obviously, there are bigger things going on in this tragedy of a school shooting. But I wanted to address this footage in particular because it deals with a problem that teachers have. So I'm going to show it to you. Don't worry, there is nothing graphic here.
Watching outside? Yeah. You can't hear That's why I told you not to open the door.
Well, if it was the shooter, I ain't put it down first.
So in case you're wondering, it's not a drill. But you're fine. If they're here, you're fine. They're not here until this is over. You heard the shots fired before you got on the ground.
Did you just see what happened there? I almost want to replay it. I'll talk through it. So what's happening here is this is presumably just right after, and there's either looks like police officers and maybe some administrator or someone coming.
Not to open the.
And the teacher says this to the student.
That's why I told you not to open the door.
That is why I told you not to open the door. So presumably whoever this child is who responds back to him and says, well, if it was the shooter, I think he says like, I would have taken him out first. I guarantee you that, or something ridiculous like that. But it speaks to this problem that I was talking about in my last video about student behavior. It is so insane that in America, some students are so out of control in the classroom that even when their lives are at risk, they choose not to behave. So I wanted to go back and talk about what I did in my classroom to prevent this, to maybe help out other teachers who are dealing with this type of behavior, and then to maybe be a wake-up call to parents that if you have a child like this who is defiant and who could have gotten that whole classroom of kids and that teacher killed, you might want to have a conversation with your defiant child about when would be an appropriate time to act out. Most of the time, acting out, okay, whatever, it's not going to get you killed. But in this instance, it could have. And then you hear other students crying in the background, and they're kind of, they kind of look over at him, and he's still being defiant in the midst of this tragedy and school shooting that has happened. He actually says, the teacher says, you see, it was not a drill. And then he tries to calm down the other students and reassure the other students. So let's talk about it. And I want to know your thoughts. So when I was a teacher, we had one of these drills like many schools do now. They're probably a lot more common now. That was like 5 or 6 years ago that I had our last drill, and I was teaching 5th graders. My class and another class in all of the entire school was the only class to pass the drill, because what we were supposed to do is all the students were supposed to be quiet. We were supposed to turn out the lights, just like you see in that video, and all the students were supposed to be down and out of sight. The door was supposed to be locked. Unfortunately, our door, it looks kind of like that door, where my door locked from the outside. Very, very annoying. And it looked like that door locked from the outside as well, because I didn't see any locking mechanism in that teacher's classroom, which is common for, it looks like a science classroom or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, that's all we were supposed to do. Guys, be quiet, turn out the lights. We were supposed to cover the window and then get down. So we had the drill. After the drill, the principal came on and announced like, hey, I think at our, not over the loudspeakers, but I think it was a teacher's meeting where he said, hey, only Miss Mays' class and this other class actually passed the drill. So we're going to have to work on that. Maybe you can ask them what they did. Well, I didn't tell anybody what I did. Okay. I want to know what that other teacher did. She probably had younger kids because my kids were the oldest in the school, but I'll tell you now what I did. So my students, and I would not recommend you do this unless you have a really good relationship with your students. And a lot of things as a teacher, I don't share because mediocre teachers or teachers without the relationship or without the skill to execute some of these things will try to copy it, and then it will end up being a disaster, right? So if you don't have the relationship with your students, you're going to have to find another way to control them during a school shooting, a real one, or a drill. So my students knew me, they knew my kids. I have 2 children, obviously. So my kids were at the school often. They saw them on YouTube. They played with them when they came to class. I told them the day of the shooting, the morning of the drill, that we were going to have a drill, that it was just a drill, but I wanted them to pay attention because they had to do what I said, right? And we had some students, maybe between 3 to 5, who were the type who would like open the door or walk out the classroom whenever they felt like it, came back in whenever they wanted to, open the classroom door for other people. We had a lot of students, if you were watching my channel back then, in the hallway who would be like, not my students, but students in other classrooms who would be banging on our door trying to get in the classroom because they didn't have a teacher or because they had a substitute teacher who they did not like. And it was a daily struggle telling my students to ignore them and not to let them in, okay? So that's the backdrop of all of this. And earlier in the year, this was early in the year, so probably a couple weeks before this, we had like a crazed parent come into the school and approach our classroom door. My door was locked because I always kept my classroom door locked, even though I wasn't supposed to. I wasn't about to let crazy people in the classroom though. And so he came up to my door and he was like motioning for the kids to open the door. And some of my students got up and they were unsure, like, do I listen to the teacher or do I listen to this parent who was not a parent of the children in my school, my class, but just like a parent who looked kind of like he was crazy. Anyway, so this is the backdrop, right? And so I knew that I really had to impress on the kids, like, I'm not playing with you. You better get down during this drill and be quiet. So what I told them was, look, I have 2 kids. I'm not willing to die for anybody. I am a teacher. I'm not here to sacrifice my life. And I also told them, now there had been recent school shootings. So my kids were in the 5th grade. They knew about them. And I told them those students who died, those teachers who died, the news is saying, oh yeah, they died protecting their students, but that's probably not true. They probably were killed so quickly, shot so quickly that they didn't even know it was happening, right? Nobody said, yeah, she spread her body across all the students to protect them. No, like the teacher one of the teachers who was killed in this last shooting, he was just at his door looking to see what was going on, and then he was shot. Okay. So I told them the truth about that and that nobody really wants to have to sacrifice themselves. And so I told them we wouldn't have to sacrifice ourselves if everybody just stays on task and do what you're supposed to do during the drill. I also told them, like, hey, I'm gonna have to call out some names. You, and you. Keep running in and out of the classroom. If you go out of my classroom during a drill or during a shooting, I am not going to open up that door. And they already knew that I hated opening the door for people when they came to my door. And I told them, like, seriously, if you leave that classroom, I'm not going to open the door back again for you if there's somebody in the hallway, because that puts everybody else in the class at risk. Okay. And I told them, like, hey, do you want me to tell Miracle's mom that Miracle is no longer here because you decided to play around? You thought it was just a drill, so you got up and turned on the lights, so you got up and went outside the door? No, I have to tell Miracle's mom, hey, yep, I protected your child. Here she is right here. And then I told the students who had those behavioral issues, like, hey, I also don't want to tell your parents, yeah, DeMarcus is gone because he thought it would be funny to get up and leave out of the classroom. So basically, the bottom line is I told them that I was not playing. I was not going to die for anybody, and that I had to protect everyone by focusing on the kids who were actually going to help themselves. I also said that so then they started asking me a bunch of questions like, well, what if this happens? What if I accidentally scream out, right? I'm like, okay, if it's an accident, it's okay, of course, but I'm talking about people like you see this student in this video deliberately getting up and like going to open the classroom door during a school shooting drill. Okay, so I told them, like, look, this is for people who are deliberately being disobedient, and don't worry. Like, of course, I actually don't want to die, but probably because I'm an adult and you guys are children, I'll end up having to protect you anyway. And it will be okay if you guys are doing what you're supposed to be doing. But I'm not going to go out in the hallway and go get somebody's child who is running up and down the hallway. Absolutely not. So I hope that helps some teachers out there who are having this problem where students will not even behave in the case of emergencies. And I really hope that parents of students like this really talk to them and tell them, like, look, even if something is a drill, you need to take it seriously. And it's funny because another teacher at this school said she told her students it was just a drill, even though she knew it was not a drill. And they were all compliant, right? So it can really depend on the teacher, the students who are in that classroom, and just the whole vibe of the school. But it's really sad that we even have to have this conversation. And it's even just outrageous that, like, a teacher has to be cursing you out to stop you from harming yourself. So we'll show it once again, and then I want to hear what you guys think. How would you have handled this? Like, there's this drill going off and your students aren't quiet, or your students are saying, I'm going to open the door because I think it's just a drill. How would you handle it? Do you think I handled it right? I felt like I did because my class was quiet during that drill. You did not know they were there. The principal unlocked our door. He's like, where's your class? I'm like, oh, they're hiding because we don't play in here. We're not going to get got, okay? And I congratulated them afterwards, and we had like a little party. And I said, okay, guys, our class is safe. I don't know about all those other classes, but our class knows that during an active school shooting drill or during an active school shooting, we know what to do. We're going to be fine. And I felt like that made them feel more safe than if their classmates were running around opening doors. But what do you guys think? We'll watch it one more time. Leave your comments in the space below.
Yeah. That's why I told you not to open the door.
Well, if it was the shooter, I ain't put it down at first. I promise you that.
So in case you're wondering, it's not a drill. But you're fine. If they're here, you're fine. They're not here until this is over. You heard the shots fired before you even get on the ground.
Crazy. That's absolutely crazy footage to me. Obviously, because it is happening, but also because this teacher is like, dude, this is why I told you not to open the door. It's not a drill. So I don't know if you can hear what he's saying, but he's like, it's not a drill.